Hello everyone, this is Stepan and welcome back to Hanging Pawns. I'll continue the analysis of round 3 of the Chess Candidates tournament being played in Berlin at the moment. Even after the first 3 rounds we have seen some, not upsets, but unexpected results, I'd say. That being said, Vladimir Kramnik has 2.5 out of 3 and he played a marvelous game against Aronian yesterday, which I don't think anybody expected. Nobody expected for him to do this well, being the eldest of all 8 and the wild card at the tournament. And some of the tournament favorites have failed to live up to the expectations of the fans. The game I'm about to show you was played between Karjakin, who's had less than ideal start to the candidates. He lost in round 1 to Mamedyarov and drew Kramnik yesterday. Yesterday. And Alexander Grischuk, who started off with a crushing defeat against the great Kramnik and went on to win in round 2 against Wesley So, who seems to be doing the worst of all 8 so far. And Wesley has been mine and probably a great disappointment for a lot of people, because I expected him to recuperate from his worse than ideal year of 2017, in which he lost a few rating points and didn't do so well at the Grand Prix or at the World Cup. And he has only half a point after the first 3 rounds. In this game, Sergey Karjakin had the white pieces and he opened with pawn to e4. We have e5, symmetrical by Grischuk, knight to f3, knight c6, and bishop c4, the Italian game or the Giuoco Piano. Bishop c5, the most common response, and d3 by Karjakin, not the most exciting variation, the Giuoco Pianissimo, or the most drawish line in chess, as it's generally thought of, and also the line which is most commonly played by beginners because it follows all the principal rules. It attacks the weak f7 and f2 squares. It develops knights before bishops, and it puts the bishops on the most active squares. It's considered to be a bit dull, but it has gained in popularity in the last few years, and it's been played much more at the top level. Karjakin even employed it against Magnus Carlsen in their World Championship match in 2016. We have knight f6, knight to c3, the 4 knights Italian, h6. Not the most common move. The most common moves for black are d6 or castles, short in this position, but h6 serves a purpose as well. It's preventing Karjakin from pinning the knight with bishop g5 or attacking the weak f7 pawn with knight to g5. And it's a common idea in e4, e5 openings, both in the Royal Pes and the Italian. We have h3, symmetrical, d6, preparing to develop the light square bishop, knight to a4, by Karjakin, going for the bishop pair and exploiting the fact that the bishop on c5 has no useful retreat squares, which is not the case in some Royal Lopez lines, because black usually plays a6 before the bishop develops. We have bishop to b6. Grischuk retreats the bishop in order to be able to recapture with the pawn and at least open up his rook along the a file in compensation for the loss of the bishop pair, and Karjakin prevents Grischuk from doing the same maneuver and taking his bishop by playing a3 before grabbing the black bishop. Knight to e7, preparing to remaneuver to g6, a more active square, and b4, advancing on the queen side, an idea which is common in the Italian, but it was better to castle and finish development first. But it's by no means a bad move, because black doesn't really have any threats yet. Knight to g6, perhaps preparing to jump into the f4 square, which is considered the most active square for the knight in e4, e5 openings, f4 for black and f5 for the white knights. Both sides castle in this position, and c3 by Karjakin, preparing for a central d4 break and creating a formidable pawn center. c6, once again copying white's move, and the position is more or less equal, but Grischuk has definitely managed to equalize, and Karjakin no longer has the advantage of the 1 extra tempo for having the white pieces. Here Karjakin decides to grab the bishop. He plays knight takes b6, of course a takes b6, not taking with the queen. Even though it's doubling black's pawns, the rook is much more active now and it doesn't require further development. Essentially white developed the black rook, so he gave him 1 extra tempo. Bishop to b3, preparing for perhaps c4 and d4. Rook to e8, rook e1, both sides develop rooks on more useful files. The rooks weren't doing much on f1 and f8. Bishop to e6 by Grischuk, going for a bishop exchange, which might have been more useful if the rook was still on f8 and Karjakin declines the trade and retreats with bishop to c2 anyway, but he could have also taken, because the doubled e-pawns are not as significant in black's attack when the rook is on e8. d5 by Grischuk, a great energetic move, definitely grabbing the initiative now and exploiting Karjakin's passive retreat last move. Had he taken the bishop, he would have had an extra tempo, since Grischuk would have had to play f takes c6, which would provide Karjakin the opportunity to break with d4 himself. And here black has a small positional edge, because he achieved d5, a central pawn break, first, before white could do it. Karjakin responds with e takes d5, we have knight takes d5, bishop to d2, defending c3, bishop f5, attacking the weak d3 pawn, and now if the knight should move, it would be attacked twice. So Karjakin responds with d4. We have bishop takes c2, queen takes c2, e takes d4, rook takes c8, queen takes c8, and knight takes d4. And the position simplifies a lot, and pieces get exchanged, and both sides stand well, but it's not obvious how either player can advance and create something even remotely similar to a menacing attack. Unfortunately, it seems that Karjakin and Grischuk weren't as eager to push for a win at all costs. The game is pretty drawish already. We have b5, a super important move by Alexander Grischuk, great positional move, and these kinds of moves are what makes good players good. He sees the opportunity for white to create a pawn storm on the queen side, and he just stops it. He prevents c4 for white and secures his knight on d5. And Karjakin responds equally good with a4, a great response, preparing to break up black's queenside pawn fortress and sort of neglecting b5, and this is the best solution to the b5 move. And Grischuk has to take, he can't allow a5, he plays b takes a4. We have rook takes a4, rook takes a4, and queen takes a4. Further simplification, trading the second pair of rooks. Knight g to f4, queen to d1, getting the queen back to the defense, because knights could do a lot of harm if they're not tended to. Queen to e4, attacking, queen f1, knight to e6, challenging the knight on d4, f3, attacking the queen before the knight trade happens, if it does happen, queen to g6, knight takes c6, queen takes c6, queen d3, b5, c4. Now Grischuk will have to grab the pawn, b takes c4, and in this position they agreed to a draw. If they hadn't, then queen takes c4 and the c6 pawn would be weak, as well as the b4 pawn, and most probably both pawns would fall, and the game would end up being a completely symmetrical pawn structure with 3 against 3 on the same files fg and h, and no side would have any opportunity to create a passed pawn. And the bishop is a bit better in these positions because the position is open, but it's definitely not enough for a win, especially with 2800 players and super GMs, which would never afford to blunder in such a position. So it is definitely a draw now. And it's not a very exciting game, I must say, as you'd expect from the Giuoco Pianissimo, but there definitely were possibilities for them to take risks and to go for something more, especially for Grischuk, who had the initiative for a while, as well as the opened a-file and the more active knight and queen approaching the endgame. But perhaps they wanted to have a risk-free game before the break day and round 4 on Wednesday. And with this draw, Karjakin went to 1 out of 3, and Grischuk is now at 1.5, as well as with a win and a draw and a loss. So both sides didn't do well in the first 3 rounds. So definitely they will both have to play more aggressively in the rounds to come if they wish to have a chance to win the candidates, as the candidates tournament is the one event in chess in which second place is equal to coming in last. Okay, you get a bit more money, but only one player, the player who wins, can challenge Magnus Carlsen for the title, which is all that matters. And it will definitely take much more risky play to achieve that. So far, the only player I'd say who showed such initiative is Vladimir Kramnik, who's playing like an absolute beast. Okay, everyone, I hope you got something from this sort of boring Italian game. Thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for more games from the candidates, as I will be covering all of them. Cheers, everyone. Bye.